Hello gamers, it's time for me to talk about flagships, because I need a new series to procrastinate over. So for the first video in this series, I decided to start with the monitor, because it's one of the more noob-friendly options. We'll start by going over some of the pros and cons of choosing the monitor. Following that, we'll go over some of the more important build options, and then we'll finish things off with a basic piloting guide. Choosing the monitor as your flagship has two main upsides. First of all, it's very easy to pilot, and second of all, it doesn't require you to spend any of your skill points on combat skills. It's going to do its job just fine without them. Now, all of its cons stem from the same issue, its lack of firepower. This means that it's completely dependent on the rest of your fleet to actually kill the enemy. As a direct consequence of this, it's pretty useless in the early game when your flagship makes up about half of your fleet. But early game combat is not that profitable anyways, so most players avoid it. The other downside is that highly skilled players will get more value out of a ship's offensive capabilities than its defensive capabilities. So for a highly skilled pilot, the monitor is going to be a lot less valuable than most other options. But if you are not a highly skilled pilot, this is hardly a problem. In order to understand the monitor, first you have to understand fortress shields. We'll start by using the Paragon for demonstration. While fortress shields are active, which you can see when the shields turn pink, the weapons are deactivated, but the shields take 90% reduced damage. There is a catch, however. As long as it's active, it generates hard flux all on its own. For the Paragon, this means fortress shields are only useful when you're under heavy fire. The monitor is different, however, for the monitor has flux shunt. This beautiful little hull mod allows it to dissipate hard flux even while its shields are up, but the amount is only equal to 50% of its dissipation. This means that if you have enough dissipation, the monitor can keep its fortress shields on permanently. Now you can further improve its dissipation rate with the Elite Field Modulation bonus, and you can improve the monitor by taking helmsmanship to make up for its low speed, but even without these skills, the monitor will perform just fine in player hands. So let's focus on some of the fleet-wide combat bonuses instead. Flux regulation is already a very generically useful skill, but it also synergizes nicely with the monitor because it gives you the opportunity to add 5 more vents and further boost your dissipation. On your path to picking up flux regulation, you can choose to pick both of the quality life skills at the bottom of the tree, or you can sacrifice one of them to pick up gunnery implants for increased ECM. Coordinated maneuvers is also a great option because the player character counts as an officer even if you have no combat skills, allowing you to benefit from the full 50% command point regeneration and 6% nav rating. This also applies to Wolfpack Tactics, where the 50% increased peak performance can be useful in longer fights. Here is a sample monitor I've built, and let's start by having a look at the weapons. First of all, there are 2 flat cannons that are built into the hull. You can't remove them. There are also 2 small universal slots. Now, you can leave these empty and use them to get more capacitors or more hull mods, but if you want to practice your aim, you can try mounting a couple of Reaper torpedoes in these slots. Not only are these good for practice, they also give you something else to do during the battle besides body blocking. You can sneak up behind an enemy ship and torpedo its rear end, for example. For 4 ordnance points, that is some really good value. Over on the right side of the screen, we can see all of the most important options for the monitor. First of all, I've gone up to as many vents as I can possibly fit. Normally this is 10, but with flux regulation, as I said earlier, this goes up to 15. That by itself is a pretty big difference in dissipation. On top of that, you can improve it even further with things like flux distributor, especially with the S-mod bonus, but also stabilized shields, because the flux cost of your shields basically subtracts from your dissipation as long as your shields are active. And for the monitor, that's mostly going to be 100% of the time. Some other important options include unstable injectors for that extra speed, because the monitor is very slow for a frigate, and that extra speed makes it a lot easier to body block effectively. On top of that, hardened shields improves shield efficiency and reduces the chance that EMP weapons will penetrate your shield. This is important for keeping your engines online. This is mostly relevant when fighting remnants, because they do use an abundance of ion beams that can continually penetrate your shield. This is also why an automated repair unit is a viable option. Reducing repair time is one of the most effective ways to mitigate this problem. Earlier I showed the monitor blocking a lot of Reapers from the Radiant, but it was a bit difficult because I kept getting my engines flamed out from its ion beams. An S-modded repair unit will get those back online fast enough that it's not really an issue. Lastly, one of the most important things is getting 360-degree shields, because by default, the monitor only has 300-degree shields, leaving an opening where it's exposed. Now you have two ways of doing this. One is to get shield conversion, and the other is extended shields. Both of them will cover that gap. The big difference is, where extended shields costs 4 ordnance points, shield conversion only costs 3, and it doubles the deployment speed. Technically, the downside is that it's not an Omni-Shield anymore, and it's locked forward-facing. But that's not so much of a downside when the ship wants to have its shields up 100% of the time anyways. Omni-Shields are only really valuable if you plan to turn them on and off over the course of combat. So for this case, the big difference really is just the 1 ordnance point that you're saving. There is one other option you might want to consider, which is Operations Center. This increases command point regeneration when this is your flagship. The problem is that it uses up all of the ship's ordnance points, but you can mitigate this if you S-mod it. There's no S-mod penalty for Operations Center, so you can easily put it on a frigate, like the Monitor, and take advantage of that 250% recovery rate while it is your flagship. Whether or not you have Reapers, the first thing you're going to want to do is hit 2 so that you can stop controlling the flat cannons manually. You want to leave those on auto-fire. Next, you're going to want to turn on your shields and hit F to activate Fortress Shields. You can just leave these on. Now, a lot of newer players will struggle with Star Sector's control scheme because it uses tank controls by default. This means that A and D rotate your ship, while W and S move it forwards and backwards. Fortunately, there is another control scheme available in the game. If you hold Shift, your ship will instead point towards the cursor, while A and D are used to strafe left and right. Now, if holding Shift sounds like a pain, what you can do is hit Escape, go into Settings, under this menu, and hit this key right here. Save that, because now, instead of holding Shift, it acts as a toggle. You can see in the bottom left, Strafe Lock is now active, which means that it will do this and I don't need to hold down the Shift key, and anytime I want to turn it off, I can hit Shift again. Alright, so to cap things off, let's look at a little gameplay I recorded to show you what the Monitor is capable of. This Radiant right here should be able to kill any of the champions if it can get onto them. So, in order to stop that, I need to get my Monitor to body block its attacks and save the champions. On the other hand, the champions can 1v1 and kill all of the other ships supporting the Radiant, so as long as I can do my job well enough, eventually we should be able to win this battle. Now right at the start, none of my ships are in danger, so I can sneak behind the Radiant and try to get my torpedoes in there, but as you can see, I only got 1 to hit, but that's not too bad. Stripped off the armor, did a little bit of hull damage. And here you can see the big danger from that Radiant is those Reaper torpedoes. Those things can easily take out one of the champions, especially when they're already high on flux. So this is a perfect situation to just insert the Monitor in front of it and physically block all of the attacks coming from the Radiant. One of the most dangerous ships in the game, and it is almost completely neutralized by this 6 deployment point ship, 1/10 of the cost. The AI can somewhat do this with the Monitor, it's an okay investment, but as a player, you can just physically position yourself right where you need to be, whereas the AI is going to be trying to do flanking maneuvers around behind the Radiant, which is not always the best option. You can see I'm messing around with orders, trying to figure out the best way to get this champion out alive. Now, these champions are really not designed to fight remnants because they only have a couple of anti-shield weapons and they've got a Hurricane instead of a Squall, which would be much better against the high shield rating of these remnants. But of course, you can see as the Monitor, I have to back off at this point because I'm pretty high on flux, and while the Monitor is tough, you're not quite invincible. Now, if I had elite field modulation, I probably would have had a lot lower flux and could have stayed in the battle. And here you can see that I pay for that because I'm not fast enough to get back in. So either having field modulation or helmsmanship might have let me save that champion. But alas, I don't have those. But that's okay, because yes, those skills will make your monitor more effective. This is for, like, a lot of people do like to only take fleet-wide skills and ignore piloting entirely. They don't even have a flagship. So what's great about the monitor is it's a good entry point for learning how to pilot, because there's not a lot of pressure here. Like, yeah, the Radiant was able to kill the champion, but I can just park my monitor right next to it, and I'm not dying. Not invincible, but able to block a lot of damage. And just by positioning myself in the right place at the right time, that can make a huge difference. And here you can see I'm really telling all of them to go as aggressive as possible so we can finish this off as quickly as possible. Because yes, I am trying my best to body block this Radiant here, but it's prioritizing killing the champions because they're cruisers. Like, the AI can tell that this little monitor is not the primary threat it needs to kill, and so instead of just chasing me to the edges of the map, which is ideally what I would want, it's smart enough to know that it should lock onto the champion instead. It's not smart enough to know that I'm going to body block it regardless. But that's the power of the human brain. You can see here's where I start to run into issues with the ion beams, turning off my engines, and now my monitor's doing a fan little spin. Luckily, I'm still just barely able to block those torpedoes, but this is a case where getting S-modded repair units would be really, really useful. For this test that you're seeing in front of you, I don't have any repair units, so I just have the baseline repair speed. If you can get an S-modded repair unit, then it repairs fast enough that it's basically a non-issue. Because you can see here, there's a window where the champion was completely exposed there, and I was not in position to block any torpedoes. Luckily, it didn't fire during that window, so everything turned out fine. Overall, you can see exactly why it's such a forgiving ship, is that you can kind of not pay attention sometimes. You can tab and unpause the game and just look at the combat map and see what's going on. And for some ships, that is very risky, and you might just die while you're not paying attention. For the monitor, you can kind of do that, and it's just very forgiving of those kinds of mistakes. As long as your fortress shields are on, you're not going to die suddenly and randomly. It takes a lot of continuous pressure from multiple ships. And here you can see, once again, that champion is right on the verge of death. All it would take was a good torpedo barrage. One of them did hit, but it was blocked by the shields. All the other threes, I managed to block with my fortress shields, so we're doing just fine here. And this is really all you need to do, whether you're like a new player who's just starting the game and wants to get used to piloting, or you're a more experienced player who's not really, one of those players who prefers to do fleet-wide command and just focus on commanding your entire fleet and not really piloting your ship, but you're curious about it and you want to get into it. This is just a great entry point. For more experienced players, as I said earlier, it's a lot easier or a lot more effective to just take something with more firepower, like, say, an Afflictor or a Doom or an Odyssey, because then instead of body blocking the enemy, you would just kill the enemy. Right? A dead enemy is not going to do any more damage than the one, like, that's just how it works, it's dead. But yeah, generally, it's just better to kill the enemy, so that's why more experienced players will prefer higher damage ships. But those are a lot less forgiving of your mistakes, whereas the monitor, very forgiving of your mistakes. So it's a lot easier to get into. I guess technically there's one more downside that I haven't mentioned, which is that you can't hear anything. Part of the Fortress Shield effect is that it muffles sounds outside of your ship, which may or may not bother you. And at this point, the battle is basically over because while the Radiant can kill one of these things, it can't kill all three of them. And so my job is mostly done. I've just got to step in just in case something bad happens. Like right now, this one champion is pretty high in flux, so maybe I should get in there to block for it. But the Radiant's also under a lot of pressure from the other champions, so it'll probably be fine. Overall, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was informative. And I guess just enjoy the show. That's about it. See ya.